So I've been dying to talk about this for a while. What exactly is Istaroth, the Shade of Time's plan? What on earth are they hiding? Because I'll tell you guys right off the bat, I think Istaroth has betrayed the Heavenly Principles already. For quite some time now. I can't say for sure exactly what they're doing, what their exact motives are, but that's what I want to talk about in this video. Is Istaroth working hand in hand with the Shade of Space, Asmodee? If they are betraying the Heavenly Principles, then what's their endgame? And the biggest question of all is, what the hell is Teyvat really? Like, what really is Teyvat at the end of the day? Are there actually two twins, or has that been bullshit this entire time? Are we stuck in a time loop? A samsara, if you will. I have a little bit of a crack theory on what I think Teyvat actually is, but let's go over what we know about Istaroth. We know the Four Shades were created as shadows of the Primordial One themselves after they conquered Teyvat from the dragons and the Dragon King Nibelung. And all of the angels of Celestia created by the Primordial One, as well as the Four Shades, were tasked with guiding humanity, looking after them, and just upholding Teyvat. With the Four Shades being at the top of the food chain under the Primordial One, or the Heavenly Principles themselves. We know over the years, things soured, humans started asking questions, the Great War of Vengeance, we know all that, and this is the first act of defiance we can see from Istaroth. When all the old original civilizations of humanity were eradicated, the celestial nails cast, she answered the cries and pleas of the people of Enkconomia, sunk into the watery depths, and she gave them one of the most important pieces of lore before Sun and Moon, a book that holds the secrets of the old Teyvat, something that's forbidden. Orobashi would later read this book and be sentenced to death. A very risky move by Istaroth to leave this book. And why would you want to leave traces of this if the Heavenly Principles doesn't want it there? She must have known that somebody someday would come along and read it. If we look at the entire nation of Mondstadt, Istaroth was worshipped there. Outright. She has monuments, statues, and then later she gave her powers and blessing to a little wind spirit that would be known as Venti. Mondstadt used to be a desolate winter place. Almost impossible to survive, a miserable place to live, with the only safe haven, the old city of Mondstadt, now known as Storm Terror's lair, that was ruled by the god of storms, a huge dictator tyrant. Venti terraformed the land to make it a lush, free land, where crops grew and life was good. Venti could do that because of Istaroth, which means that Istaroth kinda tampered with the Archon War. And this wouldn't be the first time a Shade did this, as Nabarius created Egeria, the first Hydro Archon, Renova made a deal with Shibolanke, the first Pyro Archon. We don't really know about Morax, I'm sure we'll learn eventually, but that's the second act of defiance by Istaroth. Let's keep going and you'll notice a trend here. Istaroth then effectively saved Inazuma during the Cataclysm, through the power of time. We and the Raiden Shogun in the future were able to plant the sacred Sakura. Long story short, the ley lines and the roots help keep the abyss at bay. That's why Natlan, a nation with damaged ley lines, has such heavy abyssal activity, because they lack the power of the ley lines to keep them at bay. Planting this Sakura in the future is what helped save Inazuma 500 years in the past during the Cataclysm. Raiden A outright even referencing that this was Istaroth's doing, hence the Grand Narukami Shrine that can be seen in Inazuma to this day. What else did Istaroth do? She even assisted in Sumeru with the Eternal Oasis, an oasis made by King Deshret for his beloved Goddess of Flowers. Who's the Goddess of Flowers? Oh yeah, an angel from Celestia, the old Celestia that survived, slipped through the cracks, taught King Deshret the truth of this world. Then he defected, hence where we are. And you notice the Eternal Oasis is frozen in time. Why would Istaroth do this? Maybe King Deshret asked for Istaroth's help and he got it, preserving his friend's legacy. And then in Natlan in 5.8 pretty recently with Bennett's backstory and his parents, Venti blew the Marijavari off the map, off the timeline of Natlan, because it was compromised. He was only able to do this through Istaroth. Venti even tells us this straight up. Now, there's a ton more examples, we can go into detail, I could make an hour-long video going over Istaroth and their influence, but the point is, they are very backhandedly going against the heavenly principles, undermining them and influencing things, but in a way that's clever and undetectable. It makes sense why they would empower Venti. They can influence things through another individual. In Enkconomia, the people and residents there even state that despite Istaroth straight up answering their pleas for help, they do not like to be named. Personally, they like to stay under the radar, so even the people grateful to the god of time do their best to not draw attention to Istaroth, even deliberately calling her a different name than her actual name. This is later referenced in Natlan, where the Lord of Night states that the Shades do not want to be mentioned by name. They want to stay low-key. Then she goes on to state that Renova actually went against the heavenly principles and got a huge scolding, making her afraid of them, because she, well, empowered humans to become Archons and help secure their ley lines. When the captain put Renova in that paradox where she had to choose between lifting the curse of immortality or allowing his immortal body to act as a repaired ley line, she was probably secretly happy to allow him to do that. And the reason Nabarius, the Shade of Life, created Egeria is to act as the heart of the primordial sea. The Shades fundamentally care about this world and the residents, humanity, because that's what they were created to do, along with the other angels. Lastly, through Skirk's artifact set, I actually talked about this in my last video talking about Nicole, and then there's the Hexen Circle, a whole other secret organization trying to undermine the events behind the scenes, but the first angel also rebelled, creating the citizens of Hyperborea that are now the Frostmoon Scions, along with the Voyager from outside Teyvat once they revealed the truth of this world, how strict it was in Teyvat. And what this tells me overall is the angels are equally as naive as the humans living here. They're just tasked with a different job. Once they also started questioning things, they were met with punishment, banishment, and other consequences. But the Shades are at the top of the food chain. They know more about the heavenly principles than anyone else. So it makes sense that they would undermine them, but in a very backhanded, hard to detect way, making it pretty obvious that they've all defected, not just Asmodee. Renova seems scared, she's done it a couple times, doesn't really want to anger them. Who can really say the deal with Nabarius? She's basically Rhine-Daughter now. Rhine-Daughter basically became the new Shade of Life after the Heavenly Principles has been asleep. Can you even imagine how pissed off they're gonna be when they find out? One of the 5 sinners, you know, those people so bad that you had to nuke Conria, one of them took over one of your Shades? They're going to lose their minds. Then there's Asmodee. That's basically defected following a new master already. So what's the deal with her? Well, the only thing we've ever seen of her is trapping us here. 2 siblings trying to leave, she separates us through time and space, and then we wake up and start the game. Something that's always bothered me is, why not kill us? We know that gods in this game don't have a problem doing that, they do it all the time. Even a nice guy like Morax has killed plenty. That's because they don't want to kill us. They need us here because they're trying to undermine the heavenly principles. This is all contrived, and I don't think it's for the first time. And without a doubt, I believe that to an extent, Istaroth and Asmodee are working together on this. I don't think it was just Asmodee that trapped us here. That's what we saw in the opening cutscene, but Istaroth probably helped with this. I mean, it's a little bit weird that we wake up 500 years later. That shit just doesn't happen. And wouldn't you know it, in a recent quest with our sibling, a quest that's called, and I'm not even kidding, As Space and Time for You. We have this weird meeting with our sibling, with the spaceship keys, this weird bootstrap paradox, an event where our sibling from 500 years ago misses the Battle of Conria, preventing them from saving it, where they see us again and we talk. Our sibling even acknowledging that, ooh, Istaroth, you think this is funny, and then we see what is clearly Asmodee watching, listening in. You think they're adding this for no reason? It's subtle, but that's what's happening. Then our sibling tells us what they've been doing this entire time we've been playing this game. To recreate Conria. Literally use the ley lines and Atlas to recreate the nation of Conria. Now it's a little bit vague what that looks like. Are you gonna recreate just the land? Is it going to be like as it was before with all the people, everything, the infrastructure, or just a new Conria from blank? They don't exactly explain it well, but right away when I saw this for the first time, a light bulb went off. How many times have we recreated Conria now? How many times have we done this? Is this really the first time? And it seems pretty obvious to me. This is the purpose of us being trapped here at the beginning of the game, Istaroth contriving this meeting with our sibling. Istaroth is the god of time. They have incredible foresight on events that have happened and will happen. Clearly this is meant to happen. The recreation of Conria, but why? Why Conria? Well, I think that's because Conria is the only nation to ever come close to actually defeating the Heavenly Principles, weakening them for 500 years. That is certainly a possibility. Another possibility is that we're trapped in a bootstrap paradox, a samsara. There's a lot of evidence to suggest that we've been on this journey before, and maybe it doesn't matter which sibling you pick at the beginning of the game. One sibling serves the role of abyss twin, the other the main MC, and it flip-flops. Maybe the ending of the game is really the beginning, and it keeps recycling over and over. Because maybe the only way to actually contrive a plan to overthrow Celestia is to trap Teyvat in a samsara again and again, so you can go a little bit undetected from the Heavenly Principles, until the plan is ready.
Everything in this world runs in a loop. This cycle is called a samsara.
Ah, Traveler, we meet again. What? You don't remember me? Well, allow me to join you on your quest once again.
And if you actually rewatch the four shades meeting with each other, you can tell something definitely feels a little bit off about Istaroth. They don't feel wholeheartedly invested. I think it's even Renova that states, why do you give history to them? Why the humans?
And you, Istaroth? Why did you bestow history upon them?
And that's exactly it. It was Istaroth that bestowed history to people, trying to anchor them in Teyvat and make them real. Make them as real as possible, their histories, their lore, their lives, because she cares about them. She wants to free them. I have no doubt in my mind. Everything we've talked about leads me to that conclusion. And everything she's contrived that has to do with us leads me to believe that we're the key to doing that. Well, that's obvious. We are the main character. Clearly, the events that are playing out are meant to play out. The God of Time would know more than anyone. And in order to be undetected from the Heavenly Principles, time and space are the best two to pull this off. And like we already talked about, the Shades like to stay low-key, so maybe they don't even trust each other to a full extent. Renova, it's a little bit iffy where her allegiance lies. I think Renova cares about humanity, but is more scared of the Heavenly Principles. Rhindaughter, well, she's her own being, so I can't wait to see their reaction to that when they wake up. But Istaroth is playing the long game. She's smart, and she doesn't make it too obvious her ambitions and motives. Now that we've established all that, the big question is why? What is Teyvat? Why go to such extremes? Why betray the Heavenly Principles if you work for them in the first place? Well, it's because this is a prison/ark. Teyvat is an ark. That is what it stands for in Hebrew. It's referenced many times that Teyvat is like a bubble eggshell prison world, and nobody's free. Hence the Voyager and the first angel rebelling, and the moon goddess is being killed. And then we have that scene with us and our sibling talking about the spaceship, which we're going to learn about hopefully soon in 6.2. Hope they explore this in depth because, man, I have questions. We, the MC, even acknowledge that our sibling should not be outside the ship if it never opened. Something is not right. Now, I can tell you right now, I don't think this is a trick like Lene and Lynette pulling off a magic show in Fontaine. No. You know how Nicole's always telling us about fate? Believe what you see with your own eyes, the history of the future, all this mumbo-jumbo? Well, if I'm being honest, I think Teyvat is a simulation. I don't think anything we perceive is actually real. Let me explain. The whole concept of Irminsul doesn't even make sense. What, everyone's memories is connected through the ley lines, everyone's minds neurologically? You can erase everyone's memories of a certain memory you want gone? Like Rukkhadevata, the Wanderer? Why would a planet function like that? What, the skies and constellations, you can map out people's fates and futures, it's all predicted? That's craziness. But if you actually look at Teyvat like a simulation, like almost within a little computer running a simulation, it actually makes a ton of sense. Everyone in Teyvat is connected through the same hard drive, the same monitor, and the heavenly principles, in my speculation, isn't real. They're not real in the way we think. The heavenly principles is more like parameters in a program, like implementing software for the computer to run the way you want it to. Literal heavenly principles, rules, regulations, implemented into this very coded world, and that's how it functions. But, being the gods of space and time, you can kinda work outside that if you're careful. Teyvat has a stupid amount of similarities to Amphorius. If you guys haven't played Honkai Star Rail, I'll give a very brief synopsis of what Amphorius is. Obviously, spoiler warning. Amphorius is a cosmic universal level supercomputer created by a genius that preside over the collective universe. There's a god of intelligence basically, an eon of intelligence, an erudition. This supercomputer was tasked with the objective to calculate the prime mover of life. Then an old school genius got a hold of this computer and changed the parameters from the prime mover of life to destruction, gearing this computer to kill the Eon of Erudition itself. Then this computer got the gaze of the Eon of Destruction, started running calculations and non-stop experiments and extrapolations to perfect its destruction calculation to kill the Eon. It then created its own little world called Amphorius with all these humans, beings, tragedies, these characters to teach itself what it needs to do. And it's a very realistic world. It even has something called the Black Tide, meant to kill and push humanity to the brink. And this Black Tide phenomenon functions exactly like the Abyss does. Then eventually, after millions of cycles and suffering, this computer's very own creations hijack the computer, putting it in an endless loop, so that this computer can never perfect itself, but everyone is trapped forever in this endless loop until we arrive, and obviously things go from there. Actually, in one of these characters' trailers, they even show the opening cutscene of Teyvat, like the loading screen when you enter the game. Wild. And there's even more similarities. Both in Teyvat and Amphorius, the outside world is pretty unknown. Amphorius is kind of isolated. It doesn't know about the Eons, the Geniuses, the IPC, all the other factions. And in Honkai Star Rail, we travel around as the main MC from planet to planet. It's an intergalactic journey. But Amphorius has no idea. We're this outside variable. And you know what, Teyvat? We're the same thing. We're travelers. But do I think Teyvat is the exact same scenario? I mean, we do know that Hoyoverse likes to reuse ideas, but not exactly. I don't think Teyvat is a giant sinister experiment, but I think it's an ark. It's a safe haven. I think it was initially established probably because the rest of the Honkai universe and Star Rail universe is dangerous. All the different worlds and universes on the imaginary tree. There's a lot of dangers out there. Where did the all-devouring narwhal come from? It seems to me like the angels that are also created here have become aware of their situation, and humans have as well. Yet another similarity to Amphorius. They eventually became self-aware they're in an endless loop experiment, but they couldn't do more than stall the program. Trap it in a loop. They couldn't free themselves. They needed an outside variable, us. And if I'm being honest, it kind of feels the same way with Teyvat. We were summoned here after all, we were kept here for a reason. And the Shades and Angels can't actually do anything about it. Nicole tells us this herself. You know, Nicole the Prophet? The all-knowing Nicole? Fate cannot so easily be changed. A god might be able to, who can say? I think Teyvat is a mix of a real world filled with dragons that was conquered later on, and is now a mix of a simulation and a real world. And everyone that's become aware of it is rebelling. And the four shades themselves are just avatars in this simulation. Just like the creations in Amphorius trying to rebel against their own creator within a simulation and computer. And then there's Paimon, who is clearly from Celestia. Every single thing about her aesthetic, crown on her head, I think it's obvious that Paimon is from Celestia and is the primordial one, but I think the primordial one is the admin. like the main admin of this world, kinda like Jarvis is for Tony. Not the actual person pulling the strings, but just an entity that is the main admin of Teyvat. Hence why all the 4 shades have similar characteristics to Paimon, but Paimon is the Omega. Paimon kinda serves as our admin too, in the pause screen and everything we do. It kinda fits. But then Paimon was discarded for whatever reason, shrunken down. She is not the true Heavenly Principles because the Heavenly Principles is just an AI system. And it explains why the shades have such subtle but rebellious natures. It only makes sense they would want to free themselves, much like the people of Amphorius, but they have to be subtle. Leave little breadcrumbs, like before Sun and Moon. Every single angel in almost every instance we've learned in this game has undermined Celestia to try to reveal the truth to other humans, dragons, try to push people in the right direction. But angels are not able to actually implement change themselves. They are bound to this world. Much like the heroes of Amphorius, they could only stall and do little things. They needed an outside variable. Humans are obviously the best candidate to implement change because humans are capable of extraordinary feats. And you know what's actually funny too? Same as Amphorius, it was the Titan of Time had the most knowledge of the outside world and was able to MacGyver outside the loop, outside the program. Because time is such a funny concept, it allowed Evernight to conspire behind the scenes. One way or another though, no matter what you think's going on here, there is going to be a big twist on the truth of this world once we reach the end of this journey. And whatever that massive truth is, not something just like a false sky, the old world, no, I mean something legitimately that will blow our minds. There's going to be a big reveal, and whatever that might be, whether you agree with my theory or not, the Shade of Time for sure and the Shade of Space most likely have figured this out, and are actively trying to implement change as much as they possibly can. But as is the nature of the angels, they can only guide people in the right direction, implement small changes, influence the Archon War, help during the Cataclysm. Do little things, leave little breadcrumbs so people will understand and figure out the truth for themselves. We are in a situation here in Teyvat where the Shades cannot just outright tell the public. For one, it would put everyone in danger of being eradicated again, the Shades would be severely punished because their true motives would be in plain sight. People have been scolded for less by the Heavenly Principles. Because if the Heavenly Principles function similar to parameters in a computer, it is by design meant to detect any misbehavior, implement prophecies, punishment, etc. So if that's the case, and Paimon is the original admin but probably discarded because she was faulty, maybe she originally became self-aware or aware of the situation, and then she was discarded with her memories wiped, but she still exists. She cannot be completely wiped out. Again, just like the 13th mysterious Titan in Amphorius. Then that means there must be some individual, someone, something that is puppet mastering this. But if that's the case, then who's pulling the strings? Who's the one in charge? Well, we can't say for sure, because all I've just stated is mostly just my theories based on what I've seen. At this point, I'm not even convinced there's 2 travelers or 2 siblings. It's hard to really tell. But in the same trailer they talk about the Shades, the main guy right now rebelling against Celestia is Piero and the Fatui Harbingers. And what does he have to say? Listen.
The god stays silent, as if the thought had never once crossed his mind.
Once crossed his mind.
Who is him he's referring to? We haven't met anybody yet. Well, I can guess. Maybe the guy that's actually pulling the strings is a Kazlana. Another Kevin Kazlana variant. Why on earth would Genshin Impact be the only game to not have a Kevin Kazlana variant play a significant role, because Kevin Kazlana always plays a top tier role within the story. But also, most people wouldn't even believe the truth. Similar to Amphorius, the general public refused to believe there was outsiders, but there were, us, when we traveled to that world. And even the people that figured out the truth, some reveled in it, some were scared, some it blew their minds, and others were sad because Even though they were in a simulation programmed to run these terrible cycles to teach a computer destruction, some of the heroes were sad because this was the only true world they knew. Whether it was fake or not, this was their home. So learning the truth actually made them devastated and sad. They explored this topic and I found it very interesting because it makes the whole idea that Teyvat isn't what it seems kinda sad. We meet all these characters, these beautiful nations, everything seems pretty standard, life runs along as we know it, but shattering that illusion for everyone would be a hard pill to swallow. And if change is going to be implemented, then it has to be done in a way that the people of Teyvat can survive and prosper. Because as it's been proven so many times in this game, the Four Shades and especially Istaroth care about the people of Teyvat, as is the duty of the angels in Renova's own words. And before I wrap up the video, I know there's some mixed feelings because maybe some of you only play Genshin Impact, so crossing over games, talking about different references doesn't usually sit well. But the reality is that Teyvat is not alone. We're able to convince ourselves before that maybe that's a possibility, but not anymore. We have characters like Skirk, the all-devouring narwhal, Octavia now with the new game mode, one of the Hegson Circle, a complete outlander. We have us, the mysterious Voyager, all the technology from Conria. Hell, Conria even summoned outsiders during the Crimson Moon era, and Sertologi's no longer on Teyvat, he's off blowing up other worlds. The entire purpose of Teyvat is it's the worst kept secret. It's a bubble world that's gonna come collapsing down. The only question is, why is it here and what's the purpose? That's what we have yet to figure out. But this whole idea that Teyvat is alone outside the other games just seems silly to me, since that is the point of this game. Teyvat is an arc, and eventually after we go through this entire story of the Seven Nations, the Archons, Celestia, the devs are not going to stop with this game, so the story will continue, and it will very likely involve much more outsiders in different worlds. That's the natural next step. I mean, for God's sakes, there's a spaceship here now. A spaceship. Teyvat is not alone. But overall, it's just a guess, it's just a hunch, but I think we have some Xenoblade Chronicles shenanigans going on here. And kinda like the heroes of Amphorius, trying to rebel against the simulation they were created to feed, that's kinda what we got going on here. Only the Travelers collecting the elements, the Fatui are collecting the Gnosis, kinda like Core Flames, and the Shades are undermining their programming. Kind of a wild theory, but just from what we got to go off now, that's the best I got, or at least a possible solution. Even if my crack theory towards the end there isn't true, I still think all the things I stated about Istaroth rebelling, defecting from the heavenly principles, and trying to contrive the recreation of Conria is still true, since it's kind of proven in Quest. And it makes zero sense for this quest to be called Through Space and Time for you if it's not both of them working together. If Teyvat really is a simulation, kinda like a computer, then maybe the Abyss is a virus. And maybe Conria and the Five Sinners were onto something. Maybe that virus can kill the people within the simulation, but maybe it's the only way to compromise this controlled world. Free people from their controlled fates. Allow true freedom and knowledge to not be forbidden any longer. Because if we know anything about humanity, it's that you can't keep them caged forever. Human arrogation and human nature is always going to try to break through any ceiling you place upon them. And that is why the heavenly principles, or whoever's in charge here, will never be able to control humanity. There's always going to be people like the Captain, Sertologi, and the other Five Sinners, us, the Travelers, if we're even human, I don't even know, the Fatui Harbingers, and so on. I've been wanting to talk about Istaroth for a while now because she's the most interesting shade to me. Her activities, what she's done, her demeanor, and after playing Amphorius, especially with the Titan of Time, it just made me rethink Istaroth's motives, but also the bigger picture of Teyvat. And I mean, anytime you introduce the concept of time manipulation, it's always fascinating to me, because the possibilities are endless. But there's no right or wrong answers here, so by all means, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do you agree? Disagree? Do you have your own ideas on what the Shades are doing, especially the Shade of Time? Do you think they've defected from the Heavenly Principles, or do you think they remain loyal? There's no right or wrong answer, so please let me know. It's always fun to speculate and talk about these things because Genshin has such an immersive story with rich characters and history, but a ton of unanswered questions. I look forward to reading those, but thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Like and subscribe if you'd like to see more content like this, and as always, we will see you all in the next one. Later.